In this video, we're going to take a look at the new Google Forms and some ways that you might be able to use that with your classroom. So when you create a new form, the first thing that you see is that you're going to need a title for it. And so you put the title in the way you would do for everything else by clicking where it says Untitled and putting that in. When you click outside of it, it automatically changes the title of the form down here. Now you can go ahead and give the form a description if you want. And again, hitting enter doesn't do it. You have to click outside to save that. So it's automatically saved as you go. Now there's some new things the way these look here. You've got questions that you're putting in here, and the responses are automatically generated right here. So you see the responses within the forms document itself. If you want to see the responses in a spreadsheet, you can click the little spreadsheet here, and it will create a spreadsheet with all the responses. Depends on how you want to look at them. You can also turn on or turn off responses for now. So if your students have until a certain date to respond to something, you can keep this on. Then when that date passes, you click this and they'll get a message that says this form is no longer accepting responses, or you can change this response to whatever you want. There are also some options under responses here where you can get an email notification for every new response. You can decide where you want the responses to go. You can download the responses as a CSV file, which will open in Microsoft Excel, or you can delete the responses so you can start over again. You also up here have this puzzle piece, which lets you use add-ons, and we'll get into add-ons later. That's not for this one. You can use the paint palette to change the color, or to pick background pictures or themes, and there are lots of themes to choose from. You can look through and just click on whichever one you want, and it'll take a sec to load them in here because there's a lot of them. There's a lot of data to come through. So let's pick this first one, and there we go. It's in there. You can do whatever you want with these. The preview lets you look at it as if somebody were actually taking the quiz. This one says not accepting responses because we had turned the responses off. Let me turn that back on and preview it. And this is what it looks like right now, but we're going to fix that. And then the gear lets you do settings. And some of these settings, for example, collecting email address, they have to log in as with their greenvilleschools.us, and that it collects it for them so they don't have to type their names in. I recommend always turning that on, unless you absolutely want something to be anonymous, like the surveys at the end of the semesters. You can also restrict it just to Greenville County, and you can limit it to one response, or they can take it as many times as they want to. So up to you how you want to do that. If you want them to be able to go back and change their responses, you can use edit after submit, or if you want them to be able to see everyone else's responses, not by name, but just the overall, you can check this and they can come back and they can see the overall responses at the end. So once you got the settings all done, and then this menu gives you a little bit more here, but it's basically the same things, you can start putting in your questions. Now there are 9 types of questions. There's short answer, which lets them just put a short answer here. There's also paragraph. I'll just add a new one. So paragraph gives them more space to write. And when we preview it, we'll see what that looks like. There is also then multiple choice. And you can put as many choices in as you want. Whoops, let's fix that back to multiple choice. And you just click where it says option 1, and that's your first choice. And then add option for second choice, add another option for third choice, and so on. You can also add checkboxes where the multiple choice, they can only pick one. With the checkboxes, they can pick more than one. We can also put in a drop-down menu, which is just what it sounds like. It'll give them a drop-down menu like this when they take it. We can add a linear scale which is one of those things, rate yourself from 1 to 5. And then you can give them 1 is, for example, poor, and 5 is great, or however you want to call those. They can also do a multiple choice grid, which gives them rows and columns. So row 1 might be question 1 from the survey, row 2 might be question 2 from the survey, question 3 from the survey, and column 1, let's make that Q3. Then column 1 would be, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to rank you. There's also a date option where students will be asked to put in a month, a day, and a year. And there's also a time option where students can be asked to put in a time for something. And it forces them to use the time. There's a couple other options that you get with these questions. You can put in a picture to help explain something, or if you have a picture that the question is referring to. So for example, a political cartoon or a graph or something like that. I could just put a graph in and it will put the graph, something went wrong, okay? Well, let's try a different one. Okay, it doesn't like those. So let's try the political cartoon. There we go. So put the political cartoon in here with the question. So here's what the question is. Political cartoon, and then they can put their answer here. This is obviously a bit of an old one. You also have other options on here. You can copy the question, duplicate the question. So if you have a complicated thing you set up, or use the same picture multiple times, ask different questions about it, or the same equation or the same graph, you can just duplicate it. The trash can gets rid of the question. You can make the question required, which means they can't submit it without putting an answer in. If it's not required, they can leave it blank and it will take it. I like to make things required. And then here you can also show a description, so you can type a description in, or do data validation. So data validation means that their answer has to conform to a certain format. So if it needs to be a number that's greater than whatever, or less than or equal to something, or between two numbers, or has to be a whole number, you can set that here. For text, you can say what things the text has to contain, what it must not contain, or it has to be an email address or a website. So if you're asking them to put in their email address and you click text validation for email address, if whatever they type doesn't look like an email address, it won't accept it. You can also have length, so maximum or minimum character count. So it must be at least 300 characters long, or it must be no more than 200 characters, however you want to do that. And then a regular expression, again, contains or doesn't contain, matches or doesn't match, however you want to set that up. Paragraph has very similar choices. Description, you can shuffle the order, and this is multiple choice, shuffle the order and go to section based on the answer, and we'll come back to that one. Checkboxes, I have the data validation and shuffle again. The drop-down does sections based on answers or shuffle. Linear scale just lets you do description. Grid does you can limit it to one response per column, so they can only give you a rank of 1 on one question, a rank of 3 on one question, whatever. You can also shuffle the order. For date, you can pick including the time or including the year. And with time, you can ask what time something should happen or how long should it take, the duration. But let's go back and preview what this looks like. Now we've got all these questions in here. So you can see the required has a little red star here. So here's if there were a question here, they could type their answer where it says your answer. Question is here, they'll type their answer. Multiple choice, they can pick one of them. If they try to pick more than one, just switches their answer. Check boxes, they can pick as many or as few as they want. Drop-down menu gives them a drop-down list to choose from. Scale, again, they can only pick one of these. For a grid, they can only pick one per row, but they can do more than one in a column if they wanted to. Date, they can either drop down a calendar or type it in. And same with the time. They can drop down AM, PM and just type a time in there. And then they can submit it when they're done. And I'm going to go ahead and leave because I don't need to send those responses. And I'm back to my editing here. Multiple choice is interesting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually insert here a section. So after checkboxes, there's a new section, and I'll call this section 2. And then I'm going to insert another section, and I'm going to call this section 3. And I'll do one more section here, and I'll call this section 4. So if I come back up to, well, what's it look like when I preview it, it actually gives me pages. So when the first page is down, I get to the end of that section, I have to hit next to go to the next section. And I can decide what I want to have happen. After section 1, I'll just say submit form. Unless, and here I go to the multiple choice, I can go to a section based on the answer. So if they answer the first choice, I'm going to have them go to section 2. If they answer the second choice, they're going to go to section 3. And the third choice, they'll go to section 4. So then, let's see, at the end of each of these sections, I'm just going to go to submit because I don't want them going to the other sections. Submit, and to 4, submit. Okay. So I'm going to turn off the required answer for this one so that we can go on. We preview this. There's a question, I'll type an answer, paragraph, type an answer. Now, checkboxes, I'll put those in. And now multiple choice, I'll go to first choice. Next. Because I hit first choice, it took me to section 2. But what if I went back and pick the second choice? It takes me to section 3. And if I go back to the third choice, it takes me to section 4. So you can set this up by grade level, by course, however you want to do this, but each student can then get a kind of personalized survey depending on what they put in for those forms. The last thing to look at is making some of these quizzes, and that's under settings. You can go to quizzes and make this a quiz. And here's some choices. You can give the student the grade immediately after they submit it, or you can wait until you click on to submit the grade. You can let them see the questions they missed or not. You can let them see the correct answers or not. And I like to let them see the point values and save this. And that changes a couple things here. But now if I go to the multiple choice, I've got an answer key option where I can say that the second choice is correct and it's worth 2 points. And then go back to the question. And for the drop-down menu, for the answer key, I can say that 2 is the right choice, and that's worth 5 points. And back to the question. And now, if somebody takes this, they're going to see, okay, 2 points for the multiple choice. So if I put that, and I go next, and this is worth 5 points, and I'll submit, and my answer's been recorded. Well, what's that look like? I've got a response now. So if I click on the response, I can see that I scored 5 of 7 points, the class average, median, and range. So 5 points, and the first one was incorrect. There's that. Short answer, no responses. It summarizes all the responses for me here. But then if I want to send the score back, I can click on this and release the score, and it will send me my score to my address, along with all of this information, what was right, what was wrong, and all of my responses. And that is the quick version of forms.